Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Haptic Feedback, a podcast about video games and computer technology. I'm your host Joel, and with me is my co-host Al. And Jay has gone missing in action. Together we make up the Haptic Feedback. In this episode we talk about games that ruin you. Video games addiction real? The Man Cave. Me Tarzan, you Jane. What's your fantasy? Game Pass. How much does it take to run it? Lost lead or just loss? Showcase Showdown, Xbox versus PlayStation. Style over substance? And will Al ever stop playing mobile games? Without further ado, let's talk tech. So how's it going, my friend?
Yeah,
Welcome back to Haptic Feedback.
not too bad. Not too bad. Work has definitely taken an interesting turn. I'm changing jobs, so looking forward to my new role and having a bit of fun with my my old place. So yeah, it's all good. It's all good. And obviously we're enjoying a spell of warm weather in the UK here. So we'll have to see how things go.
Yeah, it's definitely. We're talking about mind melting heat now, aren't we? It's just not just a little kind of heat wave we're going through in the UK. It's definitely, if there's ever some evidence of global warming, I think we're in it. If you know what I
Yeah,
mean.
I think what is it? The first ever red weather warning with it's pens for 40 degrees C, and I think we've hit it before in certain pockets, but I think we're gonna break some records. I think in the coming days.
Yeah, we'll break some hearts and break some bodies by the sounds of things as well.
Yeah, yeah. And how are things with you?
Okay, I mean, things just ticking along. Trying to enjoy the heat.
Mm,
My working job moving along. Lots of things happening there. It's keeping
mm,
me busy, keeping me interested.
yeah, yeah.
And really just keeping up with the technology and games news cycle. All that sort of thing.
Mm,
Yeah, I mean, nothing much to say really. I'm just trying to enjoy the heat,
mm.
and all that sort of stuff, making the most out of the kind of longer kind of like days we have.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely, definitely. And I was gonna say, I guess for our listeners, Jay's on holiday, so he's not completely AWOL.
Yeah, bastard.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, there's a good reason why he's away, but yeah, I mean, fair enough, right? I'm sure he'll come back re-energized and we'll kind of experience 3 or 4 hour podcasts from that point onwards or something along those lines. I think with that said and done, let's get into our first topic.
Mm,
So, Al, the first topic I want to get into
mm,
is games that ruin you.
mm.
But really, it's more a topic about video game addiction.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
we attempted this before, um, and actually halfway, into it, we kind of realised we hadn't done enough genuine research or background reading, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, but this time I kind of decided to come a little bit better prepared.
Mm, mm,
The angle I want to take before we even get into the games that ruin you
mm,
is to basically kind of ask certain questions.
mm,
Is video games addiction actually real?
mm, mm.
Yeah, or is it just media hype and people
Uh,
looking for something to
ah,
blame?
I
Yeah,
yeah, I think it does. I think it exists. I think it does, and I think it's not. It's obviously individual to individual, right? We all have our own little kind of vices here and there, and video game addiction is definitely a thing. And it can happen to almost anyone. And yeah, and it's so the way games are designed, the way certain mechanics are designed. causes it to be more likely, I would say, in some cases for certain games that would result in that. And I think it's designed in such a way to be able to try and take advantage of that. And then the more deeper, kind of like darker side is that gambling kind of portion of it. Yeah, that's my initial
Yeah, and
thoughts.
definitely would agree. Al, definitely would agree. And to be honest, Wikipedia has a definition.
Hmm.
They've even given it an acronym. VGA, video game addiction. Yeah? And what they've done is, I mean, I'll kind of read the definition. It's, video game addiction, VGA, also known as gaming disorder or internet gaming disorder.
Hmm.
Yeah? And it's generally defined as the problematic compulsive use of video games that results in significant impairment to an individual's ability to function in various life domains over a prolonged period of time.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's been recorded as a thing, if you know what I mean.
Hmm.
The World Health Organization has included gaming disorder in the 11th revision of its International Classification of Diseases, the
Hmm.
ICD.
To me, it's like I'm not sure it can be classed as a disease, but I'm not from the medical field. I mean, is it infectious?
Well, it's like
Hmm.
it's mental diseases, there's
Hmm.
physical kind of diseases, there's viruses.
Hmm.
I think they're thinking along they're thinking along those sorts of
Hmm.
lines.
Hmm.
The American Psychiatric Association, the APA, I mean, it actually doesn't recognize video game addiction as a disorder,
Hmm.
based on the existing evidence,
Hmm.
but it's included video game addiction as a condition requiring further study.
Hmm.
So it's been taken as kind of real,
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah. And the APA itself, they've actually developed 9 criteria
Hmm.
categorizing, you know, internet gaming, disorder. Yeah, can you imagine? There are nine
And
criteria.
how many of these do we need to tick before we're?
No idea. Still
Hmm.
under still under investigation. Also, I'll kind of read them out, but I won't go into kind of like any kind of reams of detail or anything like that. There's preoccupation,
Hmm.
withdrawal, tolerance, reduce and slash stop,
Hmm.
giving up other activities to continue despite problems, deceiving cover up, escape adverse moods,
Hmm.
and risk lose relationships and opportunities. So pretty much sounds like any other sort of addiction, if you ask me.
Hmm. Hmm. Yep. Yep. Yep.
And I mean, one thing that came up as I was kind of doing some background reading and research for this is that
Hmm.
it seems there's been a surge in, let's say, gaming disorders or video games addiction
Hmm.
since the pandemic. Obviously, we know everybody's had to stay at home.
Hmm. Hmm.
Gaming numbers and participation has generally gone up.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Sales have gone up. We've seen that from Xboxes and
Hmm.
PlayStation's kind of sales numbers, Steam sales numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, but the
Hmm.
there was something reported by the Financial Times in December 2021,
Hmm. Hmm.
and there's actually a National Centre for Gaming Disorders, I
Hmm.
think in the UK, and that opened in 2019,
Hmm.
and it's actually run by the Central and Northwest London NHS Foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at the time, it
Hmm.
was overwhelmed by referrals from schools, GPs, and parents.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, around 70% of those who were treated since it was opened were aged 18 or under,
Hmm. Hmm.
and 90% were male. But I will say that there's a Professor Henrietta Bolden Johns, who's the director of the centre, warned that it needed to triple its
Hmm.
workforce to treat the more than 100 patients on its waiting list and to
Hmm.
meet future demand, which is, it's expected to increase in 2022.
Hmm.
They're treating 50 patients a year, which in the grand scheme of things isn't massive, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it shows there's a specialist centre for this sort of thing,
Yeah.
potentially growing.
Yeah. But I think it's one of those that it's one of the consequences of how successful gaming is, right? Especially for actually being how should I say? There's the positive side of actually keeping people busy and actually keeping them relatively sane over the pandemic period, right? So yes, there's probably a small percentage of people that have gone really deep in terms of the addiction, and not sleeping, not looking after themselves, breaking relationships and other things. But I think that's always going to happen, right? With there will certain people that will be so susceptible to these things, and it's just an unfortunate side effect. I think.
I guess it's everything you would say about balance, right?
Mm,
In anything you do, there has to be a balance that needs to be maintained. And
mm,
once you go over the edge, or you kind of tip that balance, then things potentially get ugly.
yeah, 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 yeah.
But it is definitely looking like a real thing,
Mm,
because there are treatment centers seemingly all over the world now.
mm,
It's been set up to treat gaming and online addiction, if you like.
yeah.
And to be a bit more precise, what I mean by online addiction is just not it's not only about games. It's like social media, and all of that
Mm,
sort of thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Being online, typically speaking.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, if I look over some of my notes, it's what we're talking about is, for instance, treatment in the US is typically private. Yeah,
Mm,
there was a clinic in the Netherlands that has recently, basically closed down. Um, China
mm.
takes an actual hard line, a boot camp
Uh,
like approach to it.
that quote on the Netherlands one's interesting, though. The stating that 90% of the young people who seek treatment for compulsive computing gaming are not actually addicted.
Yeah, I mean it's true. I mean the guy who opened the clinic in the Netherlands, and it's a
Mm,
private clinic, mind you, yeah,
mm.
did say that.
But I guess it's quite interesting. It depends if the young person was actually themselves admitting themselves in. If it was their parents admitting
Yeah,
them in, it's quite different,
correct.
I think.
Yeah, but then again, is that because people have not much of an understanding of what, let's say, gaming is,
Mm,
or what the hobby is.
yeah, yeah,
There's an element that, to the uninitiated, that just looks like strange behavior, right?
yeah, not normal.
Yeah, not normal.
Mm,
So there's a side to it like that.
mm,
Um, but China taking the hardline boot camp like approach, where a person called Deng San Shan
mm.
was reportedly beaten to death,
Oh
and
God.
they call it a correctional facility.
Oh no.
Yeah, and we know that China themselves obviously have put kind of hard restrictions on who can play games and for how
Mm,
long.
yeah, 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 yeah,
So they are taking this extremely seriously.
yeah.
Canada has a computer addiction services center,
Hmm.
and they say gaming addiction is 80% of one youth counselor's caseload.
Wow.
Yeah, 80%. And what's
Mm,
interesting to me is the famous
mm,
clinic for alcoholism, drug addiction in
mm.
the UK, now offers video games addiction
Yeah.
services. Yeah, and they actually break that down between single player and multiplayer video
That's
games. That was the
pretty
thing that kind
specific.
of, yeah, that's very specific. That kind of knocked
Mm.
me on my arse. I thought, wow, you've got to be joking.
Mm, mm,
And I think to end, this part of the conversation, like the UK NHS, unsurprisingly is a late starter.
mm.
Their treatment centre started in 2018, in the same treatment centre we just discussed earlier. And, basically it was, time just before the pandemic hit, and obviously cases kind of tripled in 2019.
Mm, mm,
The demographic is also quite interesting.
mhm,
What the stats will tell you is there's like 2 billion people playing video games globally
mhm.
on whatever platform, whether it PC, mobile, or console,
Yeah,
or maybe even web browser.
yeah.
Of the 2 billion, 150 million are located in the US.
Mhm.
And online video games addiction statistics show that anywhere from 1 to 10% of gamers
Mm,
have compulsive addiction issues.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, 64% of the US population are gamers,
Mhm.
which is, to my mind, massive.
Yeah.
Yeah, the average gamer is 30 years old,
Mm-hmm.
33 years old.
Yeah.
The average female gamer is 37 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Males between the ages of 18 and 24 are most at risk of gaming addiction,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and 94% of males and 6% of females represent the gender breakdown of gaming addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And the last stat, really didn't know it was really that relevant, but
Mm.
they've broken gaming addiction down, through ethnicity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so it's 69% are Caucasian,
Mm-hmm.
13% are Asian, and 18% of other ethnic backgrounds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't really sure what
Mm.
the baseline was. I mean, I'm assuming it was in the US.
Yeah, I think to gather those kind of statistics, they would have to probably gather it in the US, and the demographic then probably looks about right, and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
What I take away from this is there are people actually doing real studies of this sort of thing.
Mm. Mm. And the 1 to 10%, I think, doesn't surprise me on the impact.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all.
Mm.
Now, going back to games that ruin you, and having given all of these statistics, yeah, and having really, I think what we're saying is that video games addiction is actually something it's getting real.
Mm.
If you know what I mean, it's getting real.
Yep. Yep.
There are people taking it in states taking it extremely seriously.
Mm.
For example, there's no way the UK NHS would have kind of invested money and budget into it if it didn't think it was a real thing, if you know what I mean.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, obviously China's the other end of the spectrum,
Mm.
so it's getting real.
Yeah. Yep.
But I mean, I think I'm with you in that I think as anything gets a bit more popular,
Mm.
as the participation numbers start to grow, then maintaining that balance, maintaining that healthy balance, is going to be difficult. It's going to be
Yeah.
challenging.
Yeah.
There's going to be people that fall by the wayside.
Yeah. And this is where it gets kind of interesting, whereby, I've seen it. I've seen at least some mechanisms being put in place by various companies to try and at least protect some of that kind of behavior as well. Because, back in the real past, you've listed World of Warcraft there, but I would take the extreme ones being things like StarCraft, and the classic ones are, and the most extreme ones are the ones in South Korea, where the players would play 7 days or something on the trot in an internet cafe, not go shower, not go eat, not go anything, and literally just keel over and die. That's as far as they go in terms of being addicted
Yeah,
and not being able to take care of themselves, right? And those stories were pretty prevalent, I think, in Korea, and I believe they've got an actual specific term and name for it, and they do try and limit those kind of things happening now, and at least putting placeholders around how much time people can actually play, and just making sure that there is things for them to get help around it.
indeed.
Mm.
And for anybody listening to this, when Al said, "I see you've got World of Warcraft there listed," well,
I was
I,
that was
we
pretty
have
deep.
notes. We have notes basically that we're referring to. I
Uh,
should point that out. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, but if you look at additional stats about the kinds of games that are
mm,
played, I mean, multiplayer online game statistics show
mm,
that 22% of gamers spent between 61 to 80% of their time
mm,
playing multiplayer online games,
yeah.
and kind of hold that thought in your head.
Mm,
Yeah. The most addictive video games include massively multiplayer online games, i.e.,
mm,
your Warcrafts,
yeah.
and role-playing games,
Mm,
your RPGs.
yeah. Yeah.
And obviously, we've talked about what was listed as some of the most addictive video games
Mm,
played today. That include, obviously, Fortnite.
mm,
It's played by, more than 200 million people,
yeah.
yeah, and has made, $1.2 billion through V-Bucks, their in-game, currency.
Yeah.
There's League of Legends, obviously World of Warcraft,
Yeah.
Call of Duty, Assassin's Creed, you know,
Mm,
Why that's on the list, I'm not even sure.
Yeah, so that's a strange one.
Yeah, it is a strange one. But if you look at it, we've got more free to play.
Mm,
That's a whole genre now.
yeah.
We got Final Fantasy 14, that to a degree is taken some, I think, market share from World of Warcraft for that
Mm,
type of like fantasy role playing, MMO.
yeah. Yeah.
Genshin Impact,
Yeah.
Destiny,
Yeah.
Warframe, Overwatch, Apex,
Mm,
Minecraft, Valorant,
mm,
Sea of Thieves, and the list goes on.
yeah. Yeah.
There's so much out there, right? There's so much out there,
Mm,
yeah. And that just tells me that companies, they know which side, they know where their bread is buttered.
mm,
Now, given all that information,
mm,
given all that information, yeah, and having that kind of those facts presented
mm.
to you, I will say, what games actually
Uh,
ruined you personally and why? Now, I'll start off, right, because that'll make the things a bit easier.
mm,
I'm going to call out Football Manager straight away,
mm.
because that's definitely one game that I used to play during university, where I literally had played that for almost 24 hours
Yeah. Yeah.
in one sitting. Not healthy. I missed lectures because of this thing.
Ah, it was such a classic. You just
Yeah,
you just keep playing. That it was
yeah.
always one more day, one more session, one more match.
Yeah, I was literally away for a week because of that game. Diablo 3 unwittingly spent
mm,
hundreds or 500 hours of my time,
mm-hmm.
on it.
Yeah.
Warframe, where I used to get in kind of a quick 30-minute game just before I'd go to work for months.
Yeah.
So those were my guilty
Mm,
pleasures,
mm.
really, if I'm being honest. How about you, Al?
Oh, I mean, Football Manager was a close one for me. Was I as bad? Probably not. I would have said for me, very much Counter Strike. As in Counter Strike, it was 0.8, and obviously Source as it's known now, and stuff like that. But Counter Strike I played so much, and I guess it was probably during times of like university and just after university and stuff like that, which was obviously kind of kept had kind of enough spare time to kind of play that sort of stuff. And most definitely Diablo 2. Diablo 2 for me was, I'd be playing that stuff all the way 2, 3, 4 in the morning, running
Yeah,
Mephisto runs consistently, constantly. I got to the point where I was almost, I was quite ready to sign up to be a gold seller. Sell items for and sell it to a company that can make cash from it, and stuff like that. And obviously, for me, World of Warcraft was a big one. I sunk so much time and effort into it. And I think it was one of those that the community of people that was in there, and both from a raid leading perspective and guild leading perspective, that stuff consumed. It was literally a second job, and it did consume so much of my life and time in there. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I'll definitely say that some of these games are definite time sinks.
Mm, mm,
Uh, if you don't manage yourself carefully enough, then yeah, they're gonna ruin you.
yeah. Yeah.
But equally, the other reason we play some of these games, I'll talk to kind of like Diablo 3 and Destiny,
Mm,
uh, is because we've got friends playing it.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the reality. So it's a bit more social. So there's that side of things.
Mm, mm.
But would you say that the impact changes with time and age?
Yes, I think so. I think the experience that I built through that, things like Genshin don't grab me as it would have used to.
Yeah,
Other games like you can argue Diablo Immortal that we've been playing recently, and other games I just don't fall for that same trap anymore, as it was before. And maybe that I've seen all those tactics that they played before, and actually maybe I'm also it's the nostalgia angle too. World of Warcraft, I built a good network of friends. It was great fun. There was social angles to it, but in the other games, I'm almost not being jumped into that kind of level of being stuck into with a group of friends or made new friends in there, to kind of stick with it and stuff. So I recognize the problems, and I think that's just the way we've kind of aged and matured. We've recognized these things. No longer are we I don't know, playing a game until 4 in the morning or 6 in the morning until the crack of dawn. The birds are singing.
We almost did with Destiny, and that was like 3-4 years ago, 5 years ago at most. Yeah.
Yeah, but I've kind of learned from it. It's just like, it's fine. We'll leave it for tomorrow. I will go to sleep. Sometimes
Yeah.
I think now my priority around sleep is quite significant. So.
Yeah, I mean that's it. Our priorities have somewhat changed. That's what it comes down. That's right. With that said, I think games are designed to be addictive.
Oh yeah, for
They are
sure.
designed
For
for that
sure.
instant gratification. You got loot boxes, which, and some people say, and this is gambling. So, the design of games can be a problem.
Yeah.
But is the games industry really doing enough here?
I think the protections aren't all there yet. I think that's the problem. There's definitely subtle things in there, but it's not quite enough. And
Well, it's not consistent, is it?
yeah, but then again, maybe it's also as part of the strange kind of like, you can always call it Big Brother kind of mentality. Is that if the games company then tracks this information and says it back to you, have you even signed up to the fact? Do you even want to be solicited in that way? But maybe that should be part of the terms and conditions. Is that if you do sign up and play this game, that the Big Brother statistics should be utilized in a way to protect you. And if you then let's call it, if you get a few of those messages and you decide to ignore it or opt out of those things, then there's nothing a company can do, right? In terms of under people's right to do whatever the hell they want. So
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I just think it needs to be a bit more consistent. I think
Yeah.
it needs the games industry to kind of like come together, and you kind of want to be in control of your own destiny, don't you?
yeah. It's just
Yeah.
it's just one of those. It's some basic things, right, around the amount of time people spend on it, the amount of it's just like an ethical side of things. Is that there's just an ethical standards that they should all be kind of collectively coming towards.
Yeah, but I'm sure they could even measure if you were playing a game for 12 hours straight.
Yes, exactly. If you're doing something like that,
Yeah.
then and actually, if you're actually active throughout that whole time, that's bad,
Correct.
right? So you should be.
They absolutely measure
They
that.
have these statistics if they want it. But I think they're just treading that difficult ground, and they need to put it as legal terms and conditions.
Correct, but I also feel there needs to be a duty of care in terms
Oh
of
yeah,
extreme
yeah,
cases.
yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure. And they they really should do some basic guardrails, is what I would call it.
Yeah. I think so. And, a consistent agreement between everybody. This is the way we kind of like are going to protect our fans and our gamers.
Yeah.
That would go a long way, I think, to helping improve things. I think. I mean, it's not to say that things are necessarily terrible, but I just think this is a widely unreported kind of issue.
Oh yeah.
It's not necessarily as widespread as some of the issues, but it's an issue.
Yeah.
And I'm not even sure that that all the evidence we've seen about gaming addiction is actually necessarily reliable, because it's a definition sort of thing as well.
Yeah.
There's what's normal. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's normal.
Yeah.
And some organisation recognize it as a real disorder, some don't. So there's clearly
Yeah.
there's maturity. We need to mature with it.
Well, even on the original definitions of the disorder, I was looking through it thinking like I'm probably mildly on every single one of those. It's like,
Yeah, of
well,
course.
but that's kind of normal for a gamer, is I would say. And then you say like, well, okay, what is not normal for a gamer? What's the extreme end of it? What's the danger associated with it? And
Yeah, but think on this one. This is a bit more a challenge to the whole idea of kind of spending hours and hours on a game is not normal.
yeah.
If I spent hours on hours either playing tennis or basically playing football, would that be normal?
In certain people's eyes, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Weirdly, and
Yeah,
it's
so-
just like, well, and this is the thing, right? I think this is where, well, if they are just using it to be preoccupied, if people are using, this is like watching TV or watching TV series or Netflix or others. There's if people are just deliberately wasting their time on that stuff, then that's perfectly fine. And same with gaming. And but I think there must be an extreme level. There must be a certain point at which you go like that's just too much.
Yeah, but I honestly don't. I don't think we consume video and audio the same way we consume video
Oh
games.
yeah, there's different levels of activity involved, right? So
Yeah, video games is definitely a hobby.
mm,
It's definitely something that requires skill
mm, mm,
in many cases.
yeah, yeah,
It's in a strategy and an approach and all of this sort of things. It's a little bit different,
yeah.
I think. Yeah, I mean, what I will say is what I'll conclude this conversation with is: will the games industry intervene before the governments do? Should they?
Huh? Should they?
Yeah, I'll say straight from the off. I think they should.
They 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 should because actually I think there's the extremes, right? If you take China, they may take it too far and squeeze the game companies to it works detrimental to it's kind of like lose situations then as a result.
Right.
Whereas
Yeah.
if you kind of put some goodwill and actually put some good safeguards ahead of it, then it's a win-win. So yeah, I think I agree with you. If they can put some extra time in it, that'll be great. But is a maybe well, it's one of those things. Is like if you don't do it, then you get clamped in multiple different countries, right? That's
Well,
what you'll get.
yeah. Your destiny is no longer in your
Yeah,
hands.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I think from my look, the number one, it would be the right thing to do.
mm,
You have a duty of care.
yeah,
Yeah. Number two, from a business standpoint, you're basically taking your destiny in your own hands.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and if we're and we're starting to see this, let's say, movement around accessibility of games
Mm.
and people investing crazy amounts of effort
Oh yeah, yeah,
trying to make games accessible to everybody.
yeah,
But why then are we not basically putting in crazy amounts of time and effort into making sure that gamers are protected?
yeah. Well, I think if it's accessibility, it gives you more people, more people that's playing, more revenue generation. I mean, putting guardrails around gaming restricts the game's, how much
But
you're playing.
yeah, they don't have to be. They don't have to be. They don't have to be hard
Mm.
gates. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
one thing. And just because you've got these gates,
Mm.
I don't think it would stop anybody buying the game.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so that's my kind of counter argument to that.
yeah,
I would
yeah.
understand. I'd understand it certainly, but I just think to myself, is that really going to stop anybody buying the game? And let's say,
No, no.
you stop somebody from playing the game. Let's say 15 hours straight, or whatever it might be. Yeah, but you allow them like
Oh.
now you've got to take a bit
This
of a
this goes into the
you know
free to play time gated model, and you
yeah
pay. Well, what their solution is that you pay to get through the time gate rather than actually use the time gate to actually stop playing.
yeah.
As
Well,
and
I
the
think that
term
I
and the
think
term
equally
that's
that's
out
even
there.
that's even
The
worse.
term
Yeah,
that's out there in the gaming world is touching grass. So you're
yeah.
going out and actually, enjoying a bit of the world. So if they can encourage that, it'd be much better. But I think free to play model actually works in the reverse and actually tries to take advantage of it by making you pay for it.
Yeah, I think that's just an awful sounding thing. It's just like that doesn't sit well with me at all. It's almost encouraging the behaviour, which is like not the direction I believe we should be going in.
Yeah, yeah.
But those are my thoughts on video games addiction,
Mm,
games that ruin you. You know, I do really think that the game industry need to band together,
mm,
intervene before a government does,
yeah,
or a
yeah,
set of governments does, put together some, ethical controls and gates
yeah, yeah.
and approaches for this without kind of like diluting, you know, what makes a good game.
Yeah.
They don't have to do that. That I'm certainly not asking.
Yeah, there's some very basic things that they could do together, and
Yeah,
they've pushed the extremes now with loot boxes and stuff, and I think games like, I don't know, Diablo Immortal, I think is pushed that boundary too far on on no limits associated with how much you can spend on these things.
yeah. But it's an interesting area, and I think it's a space that we should kind of
Hmm.
watch very carefully. Left unchecked, it could mean not great things for gaming.
Indeed, indeed.
Once that door gets opened, you know, you lose control. You lose more than that. That specific part of it.
Yeah, yeah.
All eyes on you in that scenario.
Hmm. Yep.
Well, Al, I think we're done for video games addiction and games that ruin you for now. I think we agreed.
Yep.
I think the games industry should intervene. Video games addiction starting to look more and more real.
Yep. Yep.
And, let's be proactive. Let's hope the industry are proactive. Let's hope we as gamers are a bit more
Hmm.
proactive about the issues.
Yep. Agreed.
And with that said, let's move on to the next topic. Right, Al.
Hmm.
The next topic I want to talk about is the man cave.
Hmm.
Yeah, cowabunga. Yeah. Now, the term man cave, it's a metaphor for describing a room with one or more male family members and optionally their friends, as opposed to be able to do as they please, while fear of upsetting any female household members with their interior design choices. I'm not sure I would have really said,
Huh.
could describe it as that. So not the interior design
Yeah,
choices.
like there's
I
a
would
bit more.
say.
Hmm.
But obviously, man caves have, multiple purposes,
Hmm.
and they are a place to be alone, to indulge in hobbies, and a hangout with male friends. It is loosely a male-only space to retreat to watch sports matches and
Hmm.
play video games. So obviously, the video games are what we're interested in,
Yeah.
and the man cave is also known as manland, manspace, and mantuary, which I love. I love the mantuary, and that is, the whole thing that I just basically kind of like read out was and talked about is really a Wikipedia definition. And actually, there are some man caves to really aspire to.
Hmm.
So, I'll draw people's attention to Last Gamer.
Hmm.
He has, he had, because I think he's up sticks and he's packed away his collection. But at one point, he had the world's greatest game room, and he had almost 45,000 games in it. And I'm talking physical copy.
Hmm.
Plus, he basically had his own arcade, and not no piddly small arcade. A really big arcade. The other noteworthy man cave to aspire to is the retro man cave himself,
Hmm.
who's actually got this. It's a venue slash museum called the Cave. Yeah, and it's just kind of like full of retro computers and that sort of thing.
Hmm.
And there's space to hang out. All sorts of things really. So and he's looking to extend it.
Nice.
Yeah, and if I'm not wrong, it's actually set up in what was an old mill, something along those lines.
Hmm.
So noteworthy man caves to aspire to.
Hmm.
Now, what would I do?
Hmm.
What would Joel's man cave look like? Well, Joel has put a lot of thought into it. Joel meaning me. I'd need a good size room,
Hmm. Hmm.
500 square foot, white walls, and in the right places lots of shelves.
Hmm.
And I'd partition it into 3 walls.
Uh-huh.
So the first wall would be PC slash Mac slash workspace
Uh-huh.
slash podcast space.
Hmm.
Second wall, retro console and arcade space. Yeah, so I'm going to describe each wall in kind of a bit more depth now.
Mm.
My PC Mac workspace and podcast space. What I'd have in it, a PC Cooler Master Orbex pod. It's basically a self-contained kind of like pod
Mm.
where you can hang your PC monitor. You've got a gamer chair, that sort of thing.
I'm assuming it tilts.
Not sure actually,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it looks like one of those old afterburner cabinets. You think about that, think about
Yeah.
it that way. And for anybody that catches us on YouTube, obviously you'll see the slides that I've prepped, and there's a picture on it. For the Orbex pod. I'd have an LG C2 42-inch 4K smart OLED TV, but for a PC monitor. Yeah, I'd actually keep my existing LG 27-inch monitor, and only because it has 3D kind of output. It has legacy 3D output, which you don't get. You don't get much of these days.
Yeah.
I'd have PC and Mac hardware, podcast equipment, but I also try to kind of have some sort of PC VR space.
Yeah.
PC VR space. Now, the second wall, what I'm having here is a retro console arcade space. So what I'll do is I'll get myself a upright arcade cabinet, Evo Media 4-player arcade machine.
Yeah.
Real arcade, old school arcade joysticks and buttons. But what this thing does, it contains a PC that does the emulation for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I might change things up a bit. I mean, I might decide I don't want a modern display in this arcade cabinet. I want a CRT. In order for me to do that, I'd probably opt for something like a Sony PVM 20-inch CRT. So I'd go for something like that.
Yeah.
Now, beyond that, retro console. The retro console wall, not walls. And I'd include the minis. Obviously, you want your SNES mini. You want your PC Engine mini. You want your Sega Mega Drive 2 mini. You want your Amiga 500 mini. Yeah, you want all those great minis.
Yeah.
But what I'd really want also is some classic consoles like the Saturn
Yeah.
and the Dreamcast. As well as obviously your yay standard PlayStation and Nintendo and even the OG Xbox.
Yeah.
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 But what I'd really love also is a real sharp X68000 and the FM Towns. Retro computers. I gotta have some of that. Yeah, gotta have it. Right. And going even beyond that, there are all of these people out there doing really amazing things in bringing almost back to life, right? Let's say some of these old machines. So, for instance, there's a small company called Apollo who have this product called a Vampire, and for all intents and purposes, it's a new Amiga.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they just enhanced the chipset, and there's a well-known Amiga chipset that never ever sort of light a day, the AAA. It's effectively a AAA and beyond. They put into this FPGA, put into a box, and started selling.
Yeah.
And there's even an Atari ST equivalent of that. I think the Firebug, can't remember what the name is now. There's the Spectrum Next.
Yeah.
And there's even a Commodore 64 variant. All sorts of things.
Yeah.
All sorts of things.
Yeah.
Now, the last space, cinema space in modern console. So, what would I have here? I'd have an LG HU85LS 4K Ultra Full projector.
Yeah.
So, I can get that big image without having to mount a large projector. Now, just on the off chance that I can't use the projector all the time for whatever reason, I still need a 55-inch LG G2 television. The gallery edition. So I could mount it on a wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are the visuals taken care of. But you know what? We need the audio as well, right? So I have this Devilliant Phantom speaker. Wonderful piece of hardware. I'd have a Sony HT A7000 soundbar because you know what? I can't stand wires. Yeah. and I basically have the last gen
Mm.
Xbox One X, PS4, PS4 Pro,
Yeah.
and current gen Xbox Series X, PS5. Obviously, there'll be a Switch there somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And more importantly, I looked at what kind of chair could I have, gaming chair could I have, or would I need a sofa? And what
Mm.
I went in between.
Yeah.
There's this 2XI EX gaming beanbag,
Mm-hmm.
and I gotta say that looked too comfortable. So I had to have one of them, right? And that's Joel's,
Ah.
i.e. me, modest or not so modest man cave. That's the content of it. You know what I mean?
Nice. Did you try to work out how much this would cost you?
No, I figured it would be probably about I think we're looking at 30 grand at least.
Probably more. I don't
Yeah, I
know.
think so. I've picked some really high end stuff. I mean, the Evo arcade machine,
Mm.
because it has got a PC built in, that's about 4 grand.
Mm.
I think the Cooler Master Orbex pod, that's probably closer to 10 grand. Yeah, we're talking about a 50 grand build here.
Yeah, and I guess it'll depend on how many retro consoles, arcades, and stuff you get if you do get. So yeah.
Correct, correct.
Mm. Cool.
What were your thoughts on this whole man
Uh,
cave thing?
I think it would have been quite similar, but would I have gone? I think I would have probably had similar things, but maybe scaled back on each of them. And then the other thing that's kind of always been quite interesting, yeah, because even the definition of the man cave was quite interesting, right? So I would actually have a bar somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't think about that.
So a bar, fully equipped
Uh,
with the right drinks, coolers so that you get all your soft drinks and stuff, as well as your hard drinks. So all that sort of
Maybe I could
stuff.
throw in a little mini,
Yeah, a
mini
well
bar
stocked
in the
minibar.
cinema space or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And then,
Right? Yeah, yeah.
oh, I tell you what would take it to the next level for me would just like a corner space for like some just so you can you can change it up so you're not just gaming all the time, but like a basketball hoop somewhere on a
Yeah,
wall
yeah,
or something, and
or a
just
pool
to
table or
yeah,
something
exactly,
like
something
that.
like that. Yeah, just to kind of like change it up a little bit, and then you can go back to it. So something like a little sports corner or a sports kind of room or section. Um,
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
if you could fit that in, obviously the budget would have to increase. And
Well, I kept this to basically taking
Mm.
gaming, but I mean, obviously the bar, the basketball hoop,
Mm.
maybe a small five-a-side pitch wouldn't have been bad. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like, and a pool table. Yeah, definite things that would have been good. Definitely, no doubt about that.
Yeah, and I don't think I think it's a difficult one because I know I looked at the videos you shared from the last gamer and stuff like that, and I do think I'd probably want like you know how the streamers and actually I guess kind of how should I say competitive e-gamers that go to kind of like gaming houses where they just literally have a full setup of multiple PCs. So you almost have like a setup where you can all game together on PCs. That's what I would love. And I may have to because the funding you'd have to put into all that versus I'd probably have to give up like the whole retro stuff just for something like that.
Mm. I could never give it up the whole retro stuff. It's too
Mm,
important for
mm.
me. But I mean, like, I can understand why you would.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Any other thoughts on the man cave or
Um,
your man cave, I should say, Al?
oh, no, I think that's it. I think that's it. Um, yeah, I think they're quite similar, and obviously there'll be certain tweaks, and you'd have to spend a fortune on these things anyway. But
Oh
no,
yeah,
I think
oh yeah,
it looks good. It's obviously things we want. It's just like a dream that we can get to that sort of stuff.
absolutely, absolutely. Now to close it off, obviously we've talked about what's your man cave and
Mm,
why. We kind of discussed that,
mm,
and I kind of think it's almost your childhood revisited,
mm.
but with finances.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. It's like the whole Skate Electric thing where kind of middle-aged men seem to be buying Skate Electric sets. But this was probably about 10 years ago or so. Yeah. And I'll leave you with one thing, right?
Hmm.
I don't know if you've seen the glass booths in shopping malls in China,
Oh.
where these got these glass
Oh.
booths
Yeah.
with these interesting looking gaming
Hmm.
chairs and I think PCs and whatnot.
Hmm.
And they're just there for people to basically come in on a shopping trip and pass some time.
Oh, that's actually quite clever though, because like your other halves could be
Correct.
off spending on your credit card whilst and obviously taking their sweet time around it, and you got a
Correct.
few hours to game away.
Yeah. That this could be if we were all digital at some point,
Mm.
that
Oh
could be your
yeah, for
man
sure.
cave.
Yeah, if you just
Yeah, yeah.
bought the whole rig and just like dropped it into your own place.
Yeah, correct. And there's even I can't remember which PC seller or AIB it was,
Mm.
but there's somebody selling a PC
Yeah.
setup with an Xbox Series X, PS5, and Switch built into it. You know, they've just
Mm.
stripped out the kind of motherboards
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and custom built this PC and had everything in it. But you can imagine if one day we were ever to go fully
yeah.
digital,
Mm.
those glass cabinets they have in Chinese shopping malls might be all you need.
Mm.
If you know what I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
all you
yeah,
need.
yeah.
It's unfortunate it looks like a little bit like a gas chamber, but what can you do, right?
Mm. As long as it's
Yeah,
air
maybe
comp,
China does have
it's
the right
fine.
idea. Not sure yet, but maybe they do.
Cool.
Okay, with that said, let's move on to the next topic. Okay, for the next topic, what I really want to talk about is Game Pass.
Yeah.
Can anybody really run Game Pass at a profit? Is it a loss lead
Mm.
or just a loss?
Yeah.
Now, what provoked this was another podcast where EJ rightfully asked,
Mm.
we know the narrative, but has anybody tried to basically qualify or quantify it?
Mm. Mm.
Not really. And I'm not even sure that I've even done that here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I took the information that I had and I tried to kind of draw some reasonable conclusions from
Mm.
it. So, what is this really about? Well, Xbox Game Pass is deemed as a loss lead strategy. We've heard the
Mm.
narrative, we've heard it plenty of times before. But what facts do we really have to evidence this?
Yeah.
I've not seen many apart from saying we're using our common sense.
Yeah.
Yeah? Does Sony have the financial muscle or appetite to deliver a similar service?
Mm-hmm.
And again, we've assumed no, because obviously Microsoft are a much bigger company.
Yeah.
But without knowing the numbers and the motivation and the strategy, no one's really going to know. Now, a definition I think we should be clear on. A loss leader strategy involves selling a product at a price that is not profitable, but is sold to attract new customers or sell the other products.
Yeah. Yeah.
Based on what we think, Xbox Game Pass is exactly that.
Mm. Mm.
However, what I will also say is, isn't that historically how we've always sold consoles?
Mm.
So keep that thought in mind now,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
because I'm going to show you some numbers that are quite interesting.
Yeah.
Let's roll into it. At the moment, we know Xbox as a business is on the up.
Mm.
And their Xbox business actually sits under this categorization when you look at their financial reports.
Mm.
It's called more personal computing.
Yeah.
Yeah, more personal computing. Now, what we know right now is that Xbox content and services revenue has increased 23%.
Mm.
And I'm taking this from the last financial report,
Yeah.
annual report of 2021.
Yeah.
Now, under the more personal computing banner, revenues overall increased 5.8 billion or 12%.
Mm-hmm.
Windows has obviously contributed to that,
Mm-hmm.
but there's been a lot of gains with gaming revenue.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually increased 3.8 billion,
Yeah.
33%, driven by Xbox content, services, and Xbox hardware.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you look at some of the numbers from that annual report,
Mm.
you'll see the numbers for more personal computing.
Mm. Mm.
Clearly, the numbers are going up.
Yeah. Yeah.
No doubt about that. So we can take from that the Xbox and the Microsoft gaming business is definitely on the rise. It's doing well.
Mm.
So the strategy so far doesn't seem flawed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So now we get to the question: Game Pass, how much does it cost to run?
Mm.
And I still have to say, dunno.
Mm.
What I did do, however, I picked up upon this piece of information. It's called the cost of revenue.
Mm.
And the term cost of revenue refers to total cost of manufacture in delivering a product
Yeah.
or service to consumers.
Mm.
So you might say Game Pass falls under that.
Mm.
And they have said revenue and costs are directly attributed to other segments. However, due to the integrated structure of the business, certain revenues recognizing costs incurred by one segment may benefit other segments.
Yeah.
That's what they've said in their financial report.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what that really says is that we're not giving you a breakdown. And basically, we're a very integrated organization.
Mm-hmm.
We're very integrated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you look at the cost of revenue in the numbers,
Yeah.
you're seeing it go up.
Mm.
Year on year, you're seeing it go up.
Yeah.
Okay? With that said, we're not absolutely clear how much Game Pass takes to run. We do know the cost of revenue is on the rise, and it's not a small number.
Yeah.
I believe it's in billions, not millions. So, what do we have? And I've said here, are silent Sony too busy counting money?
Mm.
When it's all said and done, they are still doing extremely well.
Mm.
And I took numbers from, again, their financial results.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, for the fourth quarter ending March 31st, 2022.
Yeah.
Looking at it, they're still doing extremely well.
Mm.
But I'm going to draw your attention to some numbers.
Yeah.
First of all, hardware.
Mm.
589 million yen.
Yeah.
Have I got that right? 589,000 million yen.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. Right, that's hardware for the full year. Okay? Game software. 1.5 millions of yen.
Yeah.
I hope I'm going to say that right, yeah? So what do you take from that? You take that, the money they get from games software sales is almost triple,
Yeah.
just below triple that of hardware sales.
Yeah. And that's probably a pretty good number.
Yeah, and this is Sony we're talking about.
And this was revenue, yeah? This was just sales revenue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a sales
Yeah.
breakdown.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah, not the net,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
effectively. Now, taking it one step further, and this is a bit of information we need to keep in mind, yeah? Physical software, 128,000 millions of yen. Digital software, 570,000
Mm.
millions of yen. That's digital software sales.
Yeah.
So complete games and software. But it's the part that's going to blow your mind. Add-on content, 853,000
Yes.
millions of yen.
Yeah. But I think that's the problem with that number, and it depends on their what's included in it. But I think their Final Fantasy 14 subscriptions are all in there.
But keep that in mind for some other things that we're going to talk about, Al. So we've got those numbers. We also know that PlayStation Plus is hovering around the 48 to 47 million mark. But they have also 100 million plus active users.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Active users. It just so happens that about less than 50% of those guys are paying for PlayStation Plus. So those are numbers to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Now, the next question I posed, and I start to look at this from the perspective is, why aren't PlayStation doing this? Yeah?
Yeah.
Why aren't they doing this? Because I couldn't tell from Xbox and Microsoft numbers how much Game Pass fundamentally took to run. Because the financial reporting was not breaking it down in a way that you could see that.
Yeah.
So the other angle to take it was, why is Sony not doing the same thing? Yeah. So obviously, so we've got the first set of numbers we talked about, but then this other slide in the financial report was quite interesting. What I saw was a breakdown of their first party games over a number of years, not just the 1 year, not the current financial year,
Yeah.
a number of
Yeah.
years. So what that said to me is, their first party game sales and 2 degrees second party are super important. Because if you're willing to put that in a financial report at this level,
Yep.
that means it's super important.
Yeah.
And when you look at it, Horizon Zero Dawn is, at the time of this report, shipped 20 million, and this is sell through. You have God of War, close to 20 million also.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are significant numbers. Even Spider-Man Miles Morales, which was split between PlayStation 4 and 5, 6.5 million units
Yep.
for that. Obviously, there's some smaller numbers like Demon Souls and Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. That is just PlayStation 5.
Yeah.
One other thing to point out is that not everyone likes Game Pass. So, Take-Two Interactive CEO Zelnick is not really for Game Pass. He basically openly said it doesn't make sense to us, economically speaking, because we don't think consumers are prepared to pay for that.
Yeah.
Why would they? He's right. I mean, for most companies, it would mean turning their business model upside down.
Yep.
And what he said that was quite interesting. So there's always an intersection between what the consumer wants and what the publisher is able to do. And it doesn't make sense to do that for the frontline properties, in our opinion. I think Sony minimally agrees with us because they've said so.
Yeah.
It can be potentially great for catalogue properties, as in, older games. Those are properties that have been in the market for a while. And if their price has been reduced, it can make economic sense to offer those on a subscription basis.
Yeah.
As, Zelnick has said, they've supported various subscription services before. They're happy to do so. But what they're thinking is like, why should I put onto something like Game Pass my latest game that it's taken millions to basically create?
Yeah, I mean, the only way that can happen is if Microsoft incentivizes them and actually pays them to go and do it, right? To list it. And that can't possibly be a sustainable kind of method of doing it.
Which makes sense that you would do it for your back catalogue of games that are not really, basically just been released.
Yeah.
So, what did I do next, Al? After all that? Well, I said, what if Sony wanted to do, like for the Game Pass service? And I decided to do a rough calculation using, Sony's AAA titles as an anchor.
Yep.
So these are my assumptions. A typical Sony AAA game costs 150 million GBP to make over 4 years. It'll distribute it over 4 years.
Yep.
Yeah? The digital versus physical sales split is 75% digital, 25% physical. For physical sales, Sony makes 70% of the game sale because the 30% goes to the, obviously the game store, whoever's basically stocking it.
Yep.
For digital sales, PSN, Sony makes 100% of the game sale.
Yep.
Yeah? A majority of the game sales are done in the first 4 years from the date of release. I think that's what they're trying to convey in the financial report as well. Now, I'm assuming that any Game Pass-like service will cost 250 million GBP per year to run. That's operational costs.
Yeah.
We're not accounting for users stopping and starting a subscription. We're not accounting for big exclusive deals, i.e. like what Sony are doing for Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
And we're capping second and third party as making 20 million GBP per year, approximately.
Mm.
And I'm basing that on sales of 300k at 70 GBP per game.
Yeah.
And again, we're not accounting for the 30% take from third-party games, lost if they go day in day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, bundling that all together, if Sony were to give 4 AAA PlayStation games per year, I think this costs them about 1 billion.
Mm.
Assume we need to fill a service with 200 second and third party games at 20 million GBP per game per year.
Yeah.
So that would be the amount you would lose by, not selling them
Yeah.
outright.
Yeah.
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 And I'm saying that would cost 4 billion. Operational cost to run the service, I decided to call it, half a billion
Mm-hmm.
course of the year. And so the rough total is 5.5 billion GBP required per year. Just doing this rough calculation.
Mm.
Yeah? It's a rough total. That's a bloody lot of money. Yeah?
Yes, indeed. Indeed.
Now, in order for Sony to get close to breaking even, all 47 million PS Plus Essential subscribers need to be in that middle tier. So it's 47 million times 99.99 pounds,
Yep.
and that equals 4.7 billion. So you're still short,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay? But really, the conclusion I drew of this is not so much, is it a lost lead? Is it something that you can do? It's really that one of the biggest reasons not to do it is you're just making less money.
Yep.
Ultimately, Sony are making too much money from these games
Mm.
to ever want to do this.
Yep. Yep.
So it's a question of model.
Mm.
It's a question of missed profits.
Yeah.
Yeah, not necessarily, going through the loss lead, part of it.
Mm.
So, basically, what's up for discussion? Is Game Pass the service that gamers deserve? Well, it's still not clear how much Game Pass is to operate.
Mm.
Microsoft are not being transparent.
Yep. Yep.
Now, Xbox is clearly a thriving games business. Their content and services model is clearly working.
Mm-hmm.
However, Sony seem to care a lot more about their first and second party games.
Mm.
Ultimately, it's part of their financial reports.
Yeah.
And if they had a choice, they would clearly want to continue their current model. No doubt about that.
Mm.
Sony equally are reporting that digital content is a big money generator.
Mm.
It's 30% more than just digital software sales.
Yep. Yep.
And based on this, is live service games the PlayStation future?
Mm.
This is why I kind of looked at that content, and I thought, content, live service game,
Mm.
yeah?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So they're seeing these numbers, Al, they're seeing these numbers.
Yep.
The other thing that I kind of realised is that we've naturally assumed that a day-and-date service like Game Pass is actually the winning formula.
Yep.
Yeah, it's one winning formula. It's not the only winning formula.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And that would say, like, well, why can't different business models coexist in the game industry?
Mm.
Why not? Yeah. And we know that gamers don't consume games in the same way as people consume video or music content.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
Yeah, for one thing.
Yep.
Time investment's different. The level of engagement's different.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Round it off and say, like, it's a day-and-date service for the hardcore or casual gamer.
Mm.
And the reason I said this is that I start to think about how people consume games.
Mm.
And I kind of thought to myself, if you've been given all this content as part of the service, does it really speak to the hardcore?
Mm.
There's nothing definite about that. I started to think it doesn't actually speak to the hardcore. What it actually speaks to is kind of more casual.
Mm. Yep. Yep.
Because the hardcore will buy the game no matter what.
Yeah. I think that's the thing, right? So the way you benefit the most out of these things is a casual group of gamers that wouldn't get all this stuff on necessarily of day one, and it would trickle through to them in this method. And if they've got family members that they're going with as well, then it makes a huge amount of sense for the casual gamer.
Definitely. Now, let's think about this. Is Game Pass a loss lead business? Will it ever be profitable? It's difficult to say, right, based on some of the numbers.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, I think Microsoft could sustain it. I think based on what I've seen, I think absolutely could sustain it. Sony put too much cachet on their kind of first party and second party games.
Mm.
So I don't think that's not what they want.
Yeah.
That's quite clear,
Yeah.
to me now. If you think about it, companies are there to make money.
Mm.
They really don't care most of the time how.
Yeah.
So that makes me kind of think that, you know what? I think that they won't go down the full-on Game Pass route.
Mm.
They just won't.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
their first-party games are making too much money for them.
Yeah, it wouldn't make any
They,
sense.
yeah. Sony not doing this, not going down this route, is not because they can't sustain it. It's because the smaller profit margins it might mean. And I think for me that seems to be the cold reality of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And certain assumptions that Game Pass is basically, that's the only model we can take. That's the only way to do this. So not necessarily true.
Yeah, there's definitely, but again, I think we discussed it before. The way they need to get to eventually is also similar to what Sky does with their movie services and stuff, right? You pay for essentially services and subscriptions are things that you want to look for. But that's not to say that Sky and the Sky subscription service is the way forward, because they also need to adapt their model, and obviously they're a very competitive market on especially a lot of their stuff that they're doing.
Yep, correct. So it's a very interesting discussion. I mean, I think for me it led to basically me thinking about what does Sony actually want for their business. I mean, we're making the assumption that Game Pass is actually super expensive to run, in that really it's a loss lead. But the reality is that we can't be 100% sure. There are also other factors here that people are just assuming that Game Pass is the winning formula. Why? I mean,
Only because it looks too good to be true, and this is the problem, right? And then it's just like, well, if that is the case, it's typically a scam, and it's not going to last, right? But
potentially. I mean, in order for it to last, right, the numbers got to go up, or the subscription prices got to go up,
Yep.
or both.
Yep.
This is why I honestly starting to believe now. This is why Sony are looking at a live service products.
Yeah.
Because they actually don't want to change their model. I kind of strongly believe they want to extend it.
Yeah.
To include other things, like the PC. Like live service games.
Yeah.
That's what they want. Okay, Al. With that all said, I think it's time to move on to the next topic. Alright, Al. So the next topic I want to talk about is the Xbox and PlayStation showcases. So I've titled this one Showcase Showdown, Xbox versus PlayStation, Style over Substance. And my thought on the last Xbox showcase and PlayStation State of Play, the one during E3, were basically around content. What their actual focus was. Obviously, big items like Starfield.
Yeah.
I would say items that went under the radar like League of Legends, Final Fantasy, VR, and the general approach. And what I thought was that Xbox and PlayStation are using very different styles of marketing, and in their showcase formats, different. Sony are following a Nintendo-like formula with State of Play, but they're also getting really unpredictable. You don't know what they're going to do next, really. So what I thought we'd do first is basically just look at what Game Pass has in store for us. And during the Xbox showcase, they talked about the release schedule between June 2022 and June 2023. So a full year. But you're looking at it, you can clearly see Xbox, loads of games, loads of value, no doubt. As we know, most of the first party going to be day on date, no surprises.
Yeah.
But what you will see is that for some of the really big third party games, they're not exclusive. I shouldn't say exclusive, but they're not day in day on Game Pass.
Yeah.
And in many cases, they're not even on Game Pass. And if you look at it, what can I say on 2022? For instance, the Callisto Protocol,
Mm.
not on Game Pass. Overwatch 2, ironically, not on Game Pass. Elder Scrolls Online, I think this is what the High Isle, again, not on Game Pass. 2023, Diablo, the new Diablo 4, not on Game Pass. Resident Evil 4, I guess this is the remake or the remaster, not on Game Pass. And then Dead Space, not on Game Pass. I guess what I'm trying to say here is some of the really big third-party games are not on Game Pass and not day and date.
Yeah. Is that because of the thing that you're showing in your graphics? Is that because they're just releases that you've tagged there, and they're just not intending to have it as a Game Pass on Xbox, or is it actually available on PC or something?
No, this is an absolute kind of Xbox slide. You know, if it's not tagged with Game Pass, it means it's just not going to make an appearance on the service.
Got it.
You know, and you're going to have to basically buy the thing.
Yeah, but you'd expect things like Diablo 4. That's too big of a game to give away essentially on the Game Pass.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. But that's not the thinking with a lot of people, if you know what I mean. It's kind of almost Game Pass is no game is too big. That's not the thinking that people are applying to this. And the realities might be a little different to what the fantasy is. And only time will tell. I mean, things might change, obviously. There's nothing to say that once the Activision Blizzard acquisition is done, that Diablo 4, hey, it could be on Game Pass. It could be day on day. There's nothing to say that it won't happen from that perspective. But right now, based on what they've published, not the case. And it's the really big third-party games. It's the really big ones.
Yeah.
So that's Xbox. They definitely have the numbers, and they have more, no doubt about that. Yeah. It's a numbers game, no doubt about that, and they definitely have more. Now Sony, I've said Sony are absolutely being unpredictable. Obviously, their state of play was very short and sharp, very games focused. But there were some notable, let's say, news items that I wondered to myself, why isn't this in the state of play or rolled into the state of play so to make it a bigger showcase? And that part was confusing. And it's why I'm saying Sony's a bit unpredictable. Like do Sony even know what they're going to do next?
Yeah, are they even talking to each other?
Yeah, really unclear, really. For instance, God of War Ragnarok launches, 9th of November 2022. Once I understood it. This could have been their Starfield moment in the showcase, for instance. But it was basically announced totally separately. A blog post, a YouTube video, all the usual suspects. Then you had this new PlayStation Plus, the new tiers they have that launched globally. This would have been part of their showcase in previous generations, I'm pretty sure of it.
Yeah.
And the timing was around about right as well. But yeah, again, video on YouTube, blog post, that was it. Fairly standard. And the last item was around in-zone gaming products. For PC, primarily, I think, and PS5. Now, looking at the, let's say, design language they've used on these products, and it's really headphones and monitors, it's very PS5, it's very PlayStation VR. White on black, if you like. But again, couldn't this have been part of any kind of, PlayStation showcase? But instead, it seemed like Sony was going their own way with this.
Yeah.
It's almost a separate division from what I can tell.
It looks like it, right? And the style will be different too, and that says a few things, right? In terms of that, we've been discussing it a few times on the podcast around, a one Sony kind of view, but it doesn't doesn't feel connected.
Well, it's connected in that there are some, let's say, PS5 specific features to the product, but the idea seems to be branding it separately from the console.
Yeah, but like you say, the color style
looks very PS5. So they must have been talking to each other. It just seems
Yeah,
that
yeah, it's
someone else was responsible for it, so they announced it separately under their own product line.
yeah. I think it's a separate product line, which is
Mm,
quite strange. But again, the way it was announced, quite strange. It could have been rolled up into a
mm,
showcase.
mm.
And if you think that PlayStation is going a bit more
Yeah,
PC,
yeah.
separate product line or not, how would that have mattered?
Mm,
If you know what I
mm,
mean?
mm.
It wouldn't have been a chalk and cheese kind of like, it wouldn't have been jarring at all,
Mm.
I would say, to include it.
Yeah,
And this is where I find Sony's way of doing things strange.
yeah.
It's unpredictable, very unpredictable. Even with PSVR being showcased in Sony, not PlayStation's event, in CES 2022.
Mm.
That was strange.
Yeah, yeah.
So what I thought I'd do, really, aside from really just trying to get a sense of how Xbox and Sony were handling their showcases, I also looked at 2022
Mm-hmm.
and I really stacked up the games on three consoles. Xbox slash
Mm-hmm.
PC in one bucket, PlayStation slash PC in the other bucket,
Yeah,
and Nintendo.
yeah.
Again, this is my own opinion, but what I said is I'll list out the notable 2022 releases for first, second, and third party.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that's exclusive or heavily marketed, yeah, or games with some history.
Yeah.
For instance, like a Mario or a Sonic or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
Now, looking at 2022, looking down the Xbox, part of the release schedule, it doesn't look very full.
Mm.
Not terrible in my book, but not very full.
Mm.
Jan seemed to be more or less dead. You know, my only notable game there was Rainbow Six Extraction.
Mm.
Or was it Siege Extraction? Can't even remember now. Then we obviously had Elden Ring in February,
Mm.
Destiny 2, The Witch Queen,
Mm.
the new King of Fighters, Dying Light 2, Stay Human.
Mm. Yeah, I was gonna say the only thing from your list there is it's literally that one in May. Well, I mean, nothing else came out for anyone else, but that's the only thing that seems to be exclusive, right? From
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and what did Microsoft have?
Mm.
It was Flight Simulator, and I think it was the Top Gun expansion.
Mm. Mm.
But I mean, if you look down the list, you will clearly see that really, aside from me, it looks like for this year, up till June, let's say, they've been basically living off third-party
Mm. Mm.
software. Obviously, in Nintendo's case, they're talking about a lot of kind of first or second-party games here.
Mm.
Pokemon, you've got Triangle Strategy, the Chukaboo game, Kirby, Rune Factory,
Mm.
your Nintendo Switch
Yeah.
Sports,
Yeah.
Mario Strikers came out, all of those sorts of things. And Sony, on the other hand, obviously had a much busier January, especially for the PC, where they
Yeah.
released, God of War, Uncharted for PS5 and PC,
Mm.
Dying Light 2,
Mm-hmm.
King of Fighters, Destiny 2, Elden Ring, but they had Sifu
Mm-hmm.
and Horizon Forbidden West in February.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then, March, everybody gets Assassin's Creed, the new WWE game, Grand Theft Auto. Did I say Grand Theft Auto? I
Yeah.
think this is the remaster, right?
Mm.
Or the one for the new consoles.
Mm-hmm.
Tiny Tina's Wonderland and a Final Fantasy game. I think Stranger Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin.
Mm.
But then PlayStation has Gran Turismo, Ghostwire Tokyo, and a Persona game.
Yeah, but generally the first part of a year is generally quiet. I guess most of these are, well, except for stuff like re-releases and remasters, etc. I suspect most of these would have been releases that should have happened late end of last year, and they've just all slipped right into this year, into the beginning. Because a lot of these studios normally will kind of go towards Q3, Q4 in order to go for Game of the Year and stuff and keep it fresh in people's minds.
Yeah, I don't know if the Game of the Year stuff is such an important thing. I think
Mm.
I think these days they kind of tend to, they've got the market information and the numbers
Mm.
and the
Mm.
stats to say when is it good to
Yeah,
release.
yeah.
Yeah. Then they've also got the release schedule for other titles, and I think they're kind of moving things around to accommodate that.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I think it's less about awards and it's just more about kind of, how many of these kind of let's say software titles can we sell in the first month or two,
Yeah.
of release. But I guess what I'm trying to say here is that, for all three consoles, it's not to say that it's been super busy this year, but there is literally nothing that I would say is very notable on the Xbox currently in terms of first party.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, it has the same kind of third party, games as everybody else, but it's kind of like food for thought. It's kind of like, well, what are you putting on Game Pass then in that case?
Well, I think that was the thing, right? They rushed Halo in, and people were hoping that was going to actually do well, which it doesn't. I don't think it's done particularly well, and I think there's still problems with it. And maybe they were hoping that would have been good enough to tide over into later this year and for other things, where that Starfield, etc.
Absolutely. Now, looking at the second half of the year, I don't really think it changes much.
Mm-hmm.
The footprint's very similar. July, we're seeing F1 2022. There's Stray for PlayStation and PC.
Yeah.
We're getting Saints Row and Destroy All Humans come out in August. Pretty much on both Xbox and PlayStation. But we're getting Spider-Man on PC.
Yeah.
Remastered. And Roller Drone, PlayStation and PC, which they showcased.
Yeah. Yeah.
And obviously there's I think, remastered or remade version of Destroy All Humans 2.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Reprobed. Into September, pretty much the same sort of story. A little bit more interesting. We have the third party releases for Lord of the Rings Gollum, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure All-Star Battle, Still Rising, and Evil West, which I actually think looks quite interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But on Xbox, they've got Warhammer 40,000 Dark Tide, which is very like Vermintide,
Mm-hmm.
from the same people like Fat Shark. Then Valkyrie Elysium and The Last of Us Part 1 for PlayStation.
Mm-hmm.
And Splatoon 3 comes out on Nintendo Switch, in September.
Yeah. Yeah.
Going into October, everybody's getting Overwatch, literally everybody. A Plague Tale Requiem's out on all platforms, but it's worth noting that on the Xbox that's day on date.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Marvel's Midnight Suns comes out, Gotham Knights, Star Ocean, The Divine Force.
Yeah.
Xbox finally gets Persona, right, 5. But this is the month in October we're gonna get Modern Warfare 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Xbox gets Scorn, which is again another Game Pass day on date game. And what's notable here is that Forspoken was actually slated for an October release, but now it's been moved to Q1 2023. And I think people are thinking that's more to do with it colliding with other notable, games, in the month. For Switch, they're getting a version of Persona 5 Royal as well, Mario plus Rabbids, Sparks of Hope.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're getting No Man's Sky as well, and Nier Automata. So, quite a strong month for Nintendo, I think. November, a bit of a dead month, but that's when God of War Ragnarok hits. Nintendo gets, a new Pokemon game. And then Callisto Protocol in December for Xbox and PlayStation. And a Dragon Quest game for Nintendo. So, there you have it. I mean, when it's all said and done, not terribly strong, really.
Not from any of them, I don't think. It's like, well, apart from maybe,
No.
I mean, God of War is always a big one, but they're all just a bit, what else? Is there anything else?
Yeah, I mean, it does just feels like that Sony is still playing the kind of exclusive game. They're doing a little bit more of that. But it's interesting, and, it kind of almost feels like Microsoft are a bit of a holding pattern, and Nintendo are just doing what they've always done.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because Microsoft are also still trying to get all their purchases and lineup, and that whole lineup kind of geared up properly. So, it's still going to take them a while, I guess, once they get the exclusives in and some kind of big ones under their belt.
I think you're right. Because all I did, after going through some of the notable releases, I effectively just chopped it down and based it on what were exclusives. If you're looking at it for this year, there's a real paltry number of exclusives I can I can see on the Xbox from that that notable list I put together. Significantly more on for PlayStation and Nintendo. I mean, significantly more.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
3 times as much if I'm being generous. It's interesting food for thought, really.
Yeah, but I think it is just that kind of build up. Maybe there'll be some more coming from Microsoft once they've got things in line. But again, I think maybe this is all still the impacts of COVID and other things kind of going on, which has left us in a pretty quiet 22.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I mean, there's obviously conversations around whether Microsoft can actually manage all of these huge studios and maintain that cadence they need. I mean, I thought it was going to be a kind of AAA title once a month, but it's more like every quarter. I think it was really, to correct myself, the real cadence we're talking about. But even that, at the moment, feels extremely challenging. But after I saw the showcases, I thought definitely a few things up for discussion here. I thought to myself, look, Microsoft do have games.
Yeah, yeah.
But right now, it does feel like it's more and more about 2023 and 2024. And that's when we're going to really see things kind of heat up somewhat.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't know what you think about that, but I don't think they've got all their ducks in a row in terms of their first-party studios. Definitely not.
Yeah, no, I think again, with all these sort of purchases and other things, it always has this takeover delay of things that will happen. People will move around. It doesn't surprise me, these sorts of things. And again, we're just on that kind of tail end of recovering from COVID, and there's still parts of the world which still hasn't quite got there anyway. So, there's other distractions in the world too, which no doubt is causing other issues as well. So, it doesn't surprise me 22 being quiet. I'm probably still I'm probably still in that interesting period where I don't own either the Xbox or the PlayStation 5, and I still don't see the need just yet. If something like PSVR 2 is out, that might be enough to kick me into gear, and a few other things, but I'm still not seeing it.
Yeah, it's difficult because definitely games are coming out. It's just that it doesn't feel like there's enough of a big cadence with them in. It still kind of feels that we're in that moment in time where we clearly haven't left the old generation behind yet.
Yeah.
So we're not fully leveraging the new technology. That's definitely not happening. Yeah, I think the cat will be put amongst the pigeons if by 2023 Microsoft still haven't got their act together.
Yeah.
Then there will be another kind of conversation. The other thing that struck me with the showcase is them being so different is really I felt the Xbox leadership are people that you actually want to listen to. They're like the old PlayStation leadership, right? Well, whereas a PlayStation, they seem to be devoid of any kind of interesting personalities. Maybe apart from Sony, if you're into technology. I mean, you have Phil Spencer and Sarah Bond. You want to listen to those guys speak, yeah. And I wondered to myself, is that why that PlayStation is so devoid of personality when they're doing their showcases? There's literally no one to put up on stage, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, it does depend, right? You do need those charismatic leaders, presenters, and those sorts of things, right? But you also need the ones that can actually deliver stuff, right? So you don't want to how should I say, Todd Howard's everywhere. So
yeah,
you need a balance.
Yeah, there definitely is that. One thing that I felt was really underreported, and maybe something that wasn't given enough kudos to Xbox, for is this whole League of Legends deal they struck. I felt was very interesting. It's obviously a free-to-play game, right? Yeah. But what they did is that they gave every champion they made it available in Game Pass.
Oh, as a what? Like a free unlock as a result of having Game Pass?
Correct. So obviously they couldn't give away the game, but what they did was give away every champion that was available.
Because normally what you'd have to do is you either pay you pay for unlocking them, or you grinded enough of the game in order to unlock them and stuff. Which is interesting way of doing it.
I wish they had actually made a bit more out of that,
Mm.
because I kind of felt to myself, well, that's, and I didn't cotton on to it initially, but when I did, I thought to myself, that's a really interesting way of bringing value to Game Pass.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like giving you access to a battle pass or something in order to give that a boosted free-to-play experience, right?
Yeah, exactly, and I kind of wish Sony would do something similar. It's a great idea, great idea. But yeah, again, like, I don't think Microsoft are giving enough kudos for that, so I'm just calling that out. We often think to ourselves how these services might pan out. We know that Sony are trying to create 10 or so live service games by 2026. They've got services in terms of something that's Game Pass like.
Yeah.
This might be a good way of making their premium tier a bit more premium.
Yeah, if they can do stuff like that in terms of live service and bonuses and DLC, that's as a result of that, it's great stuff. I mean, you can get that stuff from. It's quite interesting. With Amazon Prime and Twitch, you can get kind of Twitch and Amazon Prime gaming exclusives by watching streams and stuff in drops that will go into your games and stuff. So it's quite an interesting thing. Just a Prime subscription resulting in a Twitch subscription can give you some of these things.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. And whilst I was watching the Xbox showcase, I did think to myself, when you guys have these 20 or so studios going at a really kind of steady cadence, maybe what you should be doing is doing a showcase specifically for one or a number of them, rather than going through this particular format we were given, where you had the main showcase the first day that was follow a very kind of usual format, game announcements, maybe kind of Phil Spencer or Zero Bond or the guys from kind of Bethesda saying a few words.
Yeah.
But other than that, trailer and some gameplay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a fairly mixed grouping of kind of like games as well. And it might be an interesting way of kind of providing a bit more kind of like focus and cohesion.
Yeah.
That's food for thought. Maybe something for the future. On Sony, I think them doing big showcases is gonna get rare. Right? I'm thinking about why. And I thought, is Sony actually doing enough?
But maybe that's because, again, I think we talked about in the past, right? Them being the leaders of the market in general, and various, if the competition isn't keeping up to pace anyway, why do they have to do anything? Why do they have to do all these big grand things? And maybe they just don't have to. Maybe they can just drop the odd YouTube video, drop the odd the odd blog here and there on or Twitter post, and maybe that's sufficient. Maybe that's sufficient enough for the news outlets and others to pick up on it and write something for them and do all the work.
That's what I thought, Al. I was thinking, is PlayStation doing enough? Yeah, because the numbers they see are speaking to them, and they're saying you are doing enough.
Yeah.
If you look at some of the YouTube numbers they post, someone was saying the other day that God of War Ragnarok was pretty much one of the most watched videos, I think, on the internet of this year. Something stupid like that. And then you can do a comparison with the numbers they hit versus other people.
Yeah.
We're talking significant differences. I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking a massive delta here.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, right? They'll look at it and go, why do we need to put all that effort to have a paid for presenter and all this sort of stuff, when actually the YouTube video, the preview, the trailer, whatever the hell it is, speaks enough for itself. You don't need to do anything else but just show those sorts of things and let it go.
Yeah, I think maybe that's the thinking. I mean, though I do wish they'd kind of like somehow give it a little bit more structure to some of what they're doing, because it's like right now it's like a bunch of satellite kind of marketing, plans going in parallel or whatnot. I think really it kind of sums up Jim Ryan's PlayStation current day.
Mm-hmm.
Just before the PlayStation 5 was launched, he did, and the whole Xbox versus PlayStation thing was kicking in, the specs war was kicking off.
Mm.
He did say, "We'll just let the games do the talking." Yeah.
Yeah.
But my original thought was, is that because you lack any sort of personality or leadership? I wasn't sure on that either.
I think
But,
it's maybe a bit of both, right? But maybe
yeah.
it's more. You know what? I
No.
think it says a lot, right? And it is true. It's rather than doing all this other work to try and hype up something. Here is just the good finished artifact. Why do we need to mess around with all this stuff and just let it speak for itself?
Yeah. I mean, I've got to say, I did feel the PlayStation 5 announcement worked well,
Mm.
and I did think that kind of showcase they actually did do.
Mm.
That was very. I would say it's kind of like it's just an extended state of play, if I'm being totally honest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought that worked. But yeah, it's just an interesting one. I mean, PlayStation just become very, very unpredictable. You don't know what they're gonna do next. I mean, they've got out that loyalty program now,
Mm-hmm.
PlayStation Stars, and I think they've gone on record to say some of the rewards you get, yeah, not NFTs.
Good.
Yeah, they've said that. But the theory that I kind of I'm starting to have with Sony, I just wonder if you're gonna see some of that within their own ecosystem one day, because of the live service games
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. I mean, you may not, if you have to have an in-game currency, if you have a loyalty program, you have a service, and you have it's kind of, I mean, PlayStation semi-walled garden, isn't it?
Mm.
Kind of makes sense to me that you could take your currency and use it for different games. Yeah, and we kind of talked about the metaverse, and you need something to glue that stuff
Oh yeah,
together.
yeah. But
You know what I
they've
mean?
kind of had that before with many things, like whether it's PlayStation points, Xbox points, and all these other things. You can kind of do it like that. You don't have to use
Yeah.
distributed ledger tech or anything to do to
Yeah.
do that stuff.
Yeah.
These digital currencies or digital
Yeah.
kind of points have been there for a long, long time, well before
Yeah.
the basics of distributed ledger tech.
Yeah, it's within your own, like ecosystem though, which just makes it a lot easier. And I'm just thinking that would be a way of kind of I don't know what else to call it building a metaverse, but certainly having some online services and online games with some commonality. Yeah, and so that would be interesting to see. And I kind of heard that PlayStation Stars, is it, this loyalty program?
Right.
I thought the idea was that you can get some sort of monetary kind of rewards for playing games, and then don't know if that was true or not, but that's just what I heard.
Yeah, because you could do you had stuff like, I think Ubisoft had one as well, where you could unlock DLC and stuff. If they can do that for, again, PlayStation or Xbox, then it just makes it more powerful, more reason to play, more reason to collect, more reason to be loyal to that brand.
Yeah, but imagine you could grind out some currency in one game just so you could use it in another, if you know what I mean. And there were maybe events in one game where you double,
or exchange it, right? Currency
Correct.
exchange across your various
Correct.
games.
Yeah, FX, yeah, all of that sort of stuff, right? So very interesting stuff. That I mean, the other talking point would be like Starfield. I mean, you being kind of like having played quite a lot of quite a few Bethesda games. I mean, what did you make of it?
Still missing. Oh, actually, I think I like the idea of it showing more RPG elements, more classic ones. It did look more and more like a kind of a Bethesda game eventually, but I don't know if they've done a reset on it or something. And it just still needs. Yeah, I'll still wait for it to be complete. And it's looking okay. But we'll have to see, because I think they've also done stuff like, what? Then they redact the whole flying out into space and stuff. They just do a loading screen to move you out into space and stuff. But at least you can move from one place to the other and stuff.
I mean, you think there were people being unfair by saying, "Why does it look like No Man's Sky?" And to be honest, it did. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, to the uninitiated, perhaps it absolutely did.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the question mark is, could the game have looked any different based on what it was? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think and this is I think the other problem will be stuff like again the promises of handcrafted planets and stuff.
No way
I
they've
can't
obviously.
imagine they've handcrafted them all, and there'll be there'll be all be some levels of auto generation and stuff. So, how realistic and how alive they really are, we'll have to wait and see.
Well, they have got procedural generation in their games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there's nothing to say that just because you can visit a planet that it has to be like a thriving kind of planet or anything like that. It could be just something they put there for mining.
Mm-hmm. Which was unfortunately the similar sort of problems that No Man's Sky had, and again they had similar promises at the
No,
beginning.
no.
They've came good when some of them at least, but nowhere near even from what they were selling at the beginning.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I just wonder these 1,000 planets. I think they're talking about.
Mm.
What it would mean for modders. Yeah, because you can imagine, right, that a fair majority of these planets will be really, barren or bare.
Yeah, I'm
They're just
expecting
there.
it to be. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the handcrafted planets, a number of them obviously will be handcrafted, and those will be a bit more depthy and richer.
Yeah, probably ones where you have a main quest or a side quest or something. But then
Correct.
there'll be other planets that just don't have nothing on it.
Yeah, where you go to mine
Mm.
resources, whatever else. Watched it a couple of times, and I thought so.
Mm.
God, am I being unfair here? I mean, how else? I mean, don't get me wrong. I thought the frame rate was choppy, but it's Bethesda.
Mm.
They
But
looked a bit too much like No Man's
that's
Sky, but
yeah, that's what I mean. That it looked more like a Bethesda game. Is when I looked at it, I was like, yeah, okay, that's feeling more Bethesda like now. Um,
yeah, and
so,
I did also think like maybe I'm wrong in saying this, but I'm sure I've seen other Bethesda trailers where the main character's kind of like walking around doing some of this sort of stuff. You know what I mean?
but
Is it any different?
well, yeah, it's classic Fallout style. They're just rolling
Yeah.
in slowly into a land. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. It reminded me of Fallout trailers. Yeah, so I didn't know what to expect. But Microsoft, God, it was. And sometimes I thought to myself, this is dumb. Because they had basically, in terms of let's say games, quite a strong showing. It wasn't definitely was strong.
Hmm.
But then you basically put Starfield towards the end of it, and it's not looking great.
Ooh, is it a repeat of their Halo? Because Halo got a massive when they kind of initially kind of showcased it as well. It got a massive panning associated with it, right? So maybe it's what they need to shake it up a bit.
Yeah, it's not quite like that,
Mm.
but it's something similar.
Mm-hmm.
But I just wonder who watches these showcases. Do you guys QA any of this stuff before you let it out to the public? Because basically you're only as good as your last job,
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing. So that for me was quite weird. But yeah, I mean, what can I say? So Microsoft and Sony have absolutely very different kind of ways of doing these showcases.
Mm-hmm.
No two ways about it. Um, you might say that Xbox is playing catch up, so there's an element they have to try harder.
Mm.
Whereas PlayStation seemingly have got really big numbers, a lot of business intelligence reporting over those numbers, and they're thinking, well, it's working for us now. Why should we change it?
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely true. I think in my mind, and let's give kudos to Xbox for doing this whole League of Legends. Let's giving you every champion
Mm.
via Game Pass, and you know what? I think Sony will copy it
Mm.
because I think they're gonna have to copy it, having 10 live service games by 2026.
Yeah. They will have to do something similar, I think. Again, because of these free-to-play games, you're going to have to follow a similar model of giving them something, a reason to have your service.
Correct. Okay, Al, any last thoughts on the showcases?
Nah, I just hope we get a stronger 23, or maybe some surprises for the end of 22.
There's still a number of months to go. We never know, right? I mean, Jim Ryan might basically surprise us with a good few things. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, with that said and done, let's move on to the next topic. Okay, Al, we've come to that time of the night where we've got to say goodbye again, and we've survived yet another podcast.
Indeed, we have.
Yeah. I think this time we were significantly more efficient than we have been before. And I think when Jay gets back, obviously we have to continue that level of efficiency. Let's see if he kind of breaks that trend for us or not.
Yeah, indeed. We'll have to see.
With that said, I'm gonna ask my regular question, and I'll say, Al, what games and tech have you been playing with recently?
Games wise, I've been playing quite a lot of Ark Knights. That's a mobile game and stuff like that. I think I must have spoken to you guys about it.
You mentioned it, yeah,
in the past. Genshin, I'm just kind of keeping on going every so often. Punishing Grey Raven, I'm still playing. Most of the other stuff, I'm rarely playing at all. So there's enough content on those mobile games that's keeping me busy, gaming wise. And obviously we played Diablo Immortal. I played it quite a lot on PC. And I eventually got through the first season of. Well, I guess you move into Dark Clans, you fight for becoming the Immortals. I went through that first round, and then, it was completely pay to win at that point. You could see that, depending on the server that you're on, if there was lots of whales spending, you literally just can't touch them. You can't do anything to them, and it just becomes a battle of how much how big your wallet is and how much you're willing to spend on the game, and it's just not. It's not sustainable, really. So I pretty much finished up on that stuff after the first set of new Immortals were announced, and I just pretty much just stopped. I mean, there was some stuff there, but what they probably should have done was scaled the PvP, so that it was a fair, as a fair ground. But then I guess then people wouldn't spend as much as the other side. But it just seems crazy because at some point I'd imagine the numbers are going to dwindle so heavily that you won't have anyone to fight against, and then what are the whales really fighting against? If it depends if the whales continue as well, but that maybe that's enough for Blizzard and Diablo Immortal.
Yeah, it's a shame to hear that because at the end of the day, I kind of when I played with you guys, I was actually quite impressed with it for what it was.
Yeah. I mean, deep down, it was a Diablo game.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But pay to win. It's not a good look. I just hope this is not going to be the new Blizzard going forward.
Yeah, the question is does this impact Diablo 4? If it affects Diablo 4 to the same extent, it's people will be they'll complain, they'll protest, they'll probably won't they probably won't play it, they probably won't buy it, etc. I hope they don't do the same level of invasive microtransactions in Diablo 4. And I think the only thing is that, and if they don't put all that stuff in, then I think Diablo Immortal would actually have a good side effect whereby it would actually encourage players to play Diablo 4 because they liked the narrative, they liked the story, they liked the gameplay, and I think a lot of people actually went back to Diablo 3 to play back onto the next season of Diablo 3 because they were getting hooked onto the Diablo cycle again. So some people went back to it. People were using that as they're probably just gonna stick to Diablo 3 now and use that as their stopgap until Diablo 4.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of still wish that Diablo Immortals was a expansion for D3. I mean, in terms of like the content they have, but then again, I guess it's just there as a mobile game, isn't it? Really,
Yeah.
that's what they wanted, and that's what they got, I guess. But it will be interesting to see how Blizzard kind of like changes or doesn't change.
Yeah, Diablo 4 is very critical. If they do fundamentally make it, if they make it very invasive, they will lose their core audience. But maybe it'll be fine from a money perspective for them.
Well, that's all they care about, let's be honest.
Yeah. Tech wise, because I'm changing jobs. I've started studying again, AWS and other things. So it's interesting. Have I done much for my PC? Probably not. Just the regular updates. I still haven't done my thermal padding and those sorts of things. Yeah. No, I think just been looking at other wider tech stuff. I think it's interesting. The GPU market is very interesting now because things are now coming back to, discounted under MSRP.
Yeah. We'll have to have an item, like to discuss that in a future podcast.
Yeah.
I'll just add one. Let's get a conversation going on that.
Yeah. Definitely. That's me really. What about you, Joe?
My end, game-wise, I did, I've been on a bit of a gaming drought, but when I can, I kind of peck away at Bloodborne and also The Last of Us 2.
Yeah.
So I've been just doing that, and I'm gonna start gaming properly again soon, but not being able to do it right now.
Yeah.
And kind of also eyeing up Dark Tide, which is I think something that you, IJ, maybe even Rob, should look at playing.
Yeah, we could definitely, and we could do one of those kind of guided things like we did last time. I'm happy to record and stuff.
Yeah, I think that was a kind of like quite, it just looks like an interesting game. I mean, Vermintide 2 was quite shallow, but it was quite good.
Yeah, it was still good fun, especially when we're playing and progressing together, right? So
yeah, definitely. And I think Dark Tide is more the same, but there's just a bit more to it.
Yeah. So I'm assuming that we'll have cross-play, so Jay can play from his Xbox and stuff.
I think so.
All right, cool.
Yeah,
cool.
I'm hoping so anyway.
We'll do
be
some
surprised if
research
it
on
didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if it didn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean that aside from keeping up with the kind of like gaming news, that's pretty much what I've been at. And I'm just looking to kind of pick out a few games that I kind of want to pick at like sooner or later.
Yeah.
I mean tech wise, like you, I'm gonna restart my training program. I'm gonna call it that. Like basically for the job.
Yeah.
I want to get a little bit deeper with some of the technology and what we do.
Yeah.
Because obviously I've had a number of months where I've been able to kind of just deal with service level. And, because of the role, that I'm kind of more of a manager than I am anything else. But now I want to kind of get a bit under the hood.
Yeah. Once you've got the service kind of leveled off, kind of operating, then you get your hands dirty again.
Yeah, definitely. Just keeping up with the kind of technology news round, and obviously new series of CPU and GPUs coming soon,
and GPUs as well. I think that's why everything is kind of coming interesting, right? With again the prices dropping, crypto miners dropping off a cliff. So everything is coming at the right time, and that new series.
Exactly. Not a circle complete almost. So I've been keep my ear to the ground on that. But that's really it. I mean, hopefully have a bit more to report. Next podcast. But you know how these things go. Summer holidays have kicked in now. That means like my time's evaporated.
Well, we'll get a report from Jay as to see how much gaming he actually did remotely whilst away.
No gaming. That's how much gaming. No gaming. When you get into that situation, you are but a slave. But a slave. Probably basically had to kind of like look after the kids 24/7.
Probably.
Yeah. Well, anyway. Okay, Al, I think it's about time now we just give our goodbyes.
Yeah, so it's goodbye from me, Al.
And it's goodbye from me, Joel. Whatever you're doing, subscribe, like, leave a comment, leave a rating on our podcast, and have a stellar day.